My name is Emily Wilson. I've been a nurse for the past 10 years, working at Hillview Hospital. But this is not just any story about being a nurse. It's about a secret I've kept buried for far too long. A love story so tragic, so heartbreakingly beautiful, that it has destroyed me bit by bit. I don't know if I can ever fully explain the way it felt, but I'll try. I remember the day he was brought in so clearly. It was a cold, rainy Tuesday morning, and the usual rush at the ER was happening. My shift had started an hour ago, and I was just getting into the routine of checking on my patients when they brought him in. At first, it didn't seem that remarkable. We see all sorts of injuries and traumas, but this was different. He was different. His name was Jonathan Matthews, though I didn't know that at the time. He was unconscious, barely clinging to life after a car accident. His face was bruised and battered, his body a mess of broken bones and contusions. He was in a coma, and we didn't know if he'd ever wake up. The doctor said his chances were slim, but I didn't care about statistics. I knew that somehow I had to help him. It was something in the way he looked, even in that state. So vulnerable, so human, despite the wealth he undoubtedly had. I later found out that Jonathan Matthews was a billionaire, a name everyone in the city knew. His company, Matthews Technologies, was the crown jewel of Silicon Valley. A genius in his field, he had everything anyone could ever dream of: money, success, fame, and power. Yet there he was, lying in that sterile hospital bed, completely helpless, unable to speak or move. As days turned into weeks, I found myself spending more time in his room. It wasn't just about the medical care anymore. I couldn't explain it, but I felt connected to him in a way I had never felt with anyone else. His family didn't come often. His business meetings were rescheduled or postponed. It was just me, alone with him in the sterile white room, talking to him like he could hear me. I had to believe he could hear me. I had to. I started reading to him, books, poetry, anything I could find. Sometimes I played his favorite classical music on my phone, though I had no idea if he even liked it. I simply had to believe that somehow, in that silent world, I could reach him. It was strange, but I began to look forward to those moments alone with him, speaking to him, telling him about my day, my life, things that no one else knew. I had this secret love for him, and it was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever experienced. I knew he would never feel the same way. He could never feel anything, not in the state he was in. Months passed, and his body slowly began to heal, but Jonathan never woke up. His family rarely visited, always sending a lawyer or assistant to handle any business affairs. I could tell they didn't care as much as they should have. They didn't see him as a person. They saw him as an asset. It was painfully clear. But to me, he wasn't just a billionaire in a coma. He was a man, a human being, with dreams, memories, and a life. And I couldn't help but feel that he deserved more than the cold, indifferent world that surrounded him. I kept my feelings hidden, of course. No one could know. Nurses, especially ones like me, didn't get involved with patients. It was unprofessional, unethical, and foolish. But I couldn't help it. My feelings for Jonathan grew, and every day I spent with him, I felt like I was falling deeper into a love I knew could never be returned. Then came the moment that changed everything. One night, while checking his vitals, I noticed a slight twitch in his fingers. Just a small movement, barely noticeable. My heart raced as I watched him, unsure of what to think. Could it be? Could Jonathan be waking up? I quickly alerted the doctors, and within minutes they were in his room, performing all sorts of tests. His eyes moved slightly, and for the first time in months, I saw something, anything, in him that resembled life. They said it was too early to tell, but I refused to listen. I knew what I had seen. I stayed by his side for the next few days, talking to him more than ever before. I begged him to come back to me. I pleaded with him to wake up. I told him how much I cared, how much I wanted him to know how much he meant to me. It was absurd, I knew that, but it didn't matter. I was desperate. And then, on a quiet morning in early spring, it happened. Jonathan Matthews opened his eyes. At first, they were cloudy, unfocused, but then they slowly found me. He looked at me, really looked at me. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my breath catching in my throat. He was alive. He was here. "Emily," he whispered. His voice was hoarse, barely audible, but it was there. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was dreaming. My mind raced. Was he really awake? Or was this just another fevered hallucination, another wishful thinking moment? But no, it was real. He was looking at me. He was talking to me. I'm here, I stammered, not knowing what else to say. My emotions overwhelmed me. He tried to smile, but it was weak. His face still looked battered, but his eyes were alive. They held a kind of vulnerability I hadn't seen before. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. I didn't know how to respond. All I could think was that the man I had spent so many months falling in love with was finally awake. But as I looked into his eyes, something else became clear. He wasn't the same person I had imagined in my head. He wasn't the same person I had loved from afar. The Jonathan I had fallen for, the one who had been distant, cold, a billionaire locked in his own world, wasn't the man who now looked at me with confusion in his eyes. He was lost. He didn't remember much, not even his own life. It was like everything had been wiped away. The only thing he remembered was me, the nurse who had been by his side every day, the woman who had spent so much time talking to him as if he could hear her. And that's when the real heartbreak began. He remembered my name. He remembered my name before he remembered his own. At first, I thought that meant something, that somehow, in all those months of speaking to him while he lay in silence, something inside him had heard me. That he felt me, knew me, maybe even loved me. That dangerous, delicate word started creeping into my mind like sunlight breaking into a dark room. I didn't dare say it, but it was there. He spent the next few weeks in recovery, learning how to walk again, regaining control of his body, and slowly regaining fragments of memory. He would smile when I entered the room, always asking, "Have you been here long?" as if I hadn't practically lived in that hospital room for the past 7 months. And I, foolishly, hopelessly, began to believe in a future. A future where maybe, just maybe, Jonathan Matthews wouldn't see me as just a nurse. But fairy tales don't come true for people like me. Reality crept in slowly. At first, it was just his lawyer, Mitchell Grant, visiting more often, asking more questions, looking at me with suspicion, like I was a problem that needed solving. Then came his family, his estranged brother, Stephen, and his ever-so-perfect fiancée, Clara Hamilton. Yes, you read that right. He had a fiancée. No one had told me. No chart, no visit, no photo, no conversation had ever mentioned her. She had never come to visit him. Not once. And yet, there she stood one morning in his recovery room, tall, elegant, dressed like she'd walked out of a Vogue cover shoot, with an expensive bouquet and a smile so fake it made my skin crawl. I stood by the monitor, chart in hand, trying not to shake as I watched her lean in and kiss his cheek. "Baby," she said sweetly, "you're awake. I can't believe it." Jonathan blinked, confused. "Do I know you?" That should have made me feel vindicated, maybe even triumphant, but all I felt was hollow. Clara tilted her head, brushing his hair back like she owned him. "I'm Clara, your fiancée." He stared at her, then slowly turned toward me. I looked away. He never asked me why I hadn't told him. I guess he figured I hadn't known either. But I had. Not at first, of course, but somewhere around month 3 of his coma, I had come across an old article on my lunch break. Silicon Kingpin Matthews engaged to heiress Clara Hamilton. There were photos, lavish parties, rumors of wedding delays, and I hadn't said a word. I was so far gone by then, so deeply in love with the ghost of a man I barely knew, that I clung to my silence like it was mercy. The days after that were different. Cold. He stopped smiling as much, stopped asking me to read, stopped calling me by name. Clara was around more, hovering like a storm cloud. She would slide her hand into his during physical therapy sessions, laugh loudly about stories he didn't remember, bring him his favorite coffee that made him gag because, as he whispered to me once, I don't think I even like coffee. He was trying to remember who he had been, and I was trying to forget who I had become. I knew I needed to distance myself, professionally and personally. The head nurse called me in one evening, gently suggesting I request a transfer to another floor. She didn't say it outright, but I saw it in her eyes. The way I looked at Jonathan, it was too much. So I agreed. I packed up the things I had kept in that room. Books, a small plant I had placed on the windowsill, a blanket I used during the long night shifts, and left him behind. No goodbye, no closure, just silence. But the worst part, he never came after me. For 2 months, I stayed on the second floor, working with pediatric trauma cases. I avoided his wing, his name, his story. I told myself it was over, that what I felt had been a figment, a beautiful, heartbreaking dream I had no right to. He was a billionaire with a life of privilege waiting for him. I was just a nurse, a woman with a tiny apartment, unpaid student loans, and a heart that wouldn't stop aching. Until one day, I saw him again. I was walking past the hospital garden on my break, trying to catch some sunlight, when I heard someone call out. "Emily?" I turned. It was him. He was standing there, alone, leaning slightly on a cane, dressed in a sweater and jeans like any other man, not the billionaire from magazines, not the man with a glass tower for an office. Just a man. And the way he looked at me, like he hadn't stopped thinking about me either. "I've been looking for you," he said quietly. My throat closed up. I wanted to run. I wanted to throw my arms around him. I wanted to scream, but I did none of those things. "You look better," I said. He smiled faintly. "You don't." I laughed, one of those bitter, sharp laughs that come out of a broken place. Yeah, well, people don't sleep much when they're grieving someone who's alive. He winced. "I deserve that." We sat on the bench, not speaking for a few moments. I watched a child chase a butterfly across the garden. For a second, I felt like the whole world had moved on without me. "I remember things now," he finally said. "But I also remember you, more than anything else. You were the only real thing." I swallowed hard. "And what does that mean now? With Clara? With your empire waiting?" He looked down. "We broke it off. Clara and I. Turns out she was more in love with the image of me than the man I've become. I wanted that to matter. I wanted to believe it changed everything. But I knew better. She'll be fine," I muttered. Her type always lands on their feet. He looked at me. "And you?" I barely know where my feet are anymore. He reached out for my hand. His touch sent shivers through me. But I didn't pull away. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But the part of me that still loved him, that still whispered stories to his sleeping body at 3 a.m., refused to let go. "I think about you all the time," he said softly. "I just didn't know how to come back to you after everything. You don't get to come back to something that was never yours." That made him flinch. Good, because the pain in my chest never left. I fell in love with someone who didn't know I existed. I continued. And then I lost him the moment he opened his eyes. He tried to speak, but I shook my head. "You weren't mine to begin with, and I don't think I can be someone's recovery story. I need to be someone's choice, not their consequence." He nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "I'm sorry, Emily, for everything. For not waking up sooner. For waking up into someone I didn't recognize." We sat there until the sun dipped low. He left before I did. I watched him walk away, this time not hooked to monitors, not lost in a coma, but somehow still unreachable. And that was the last time I ever saw him. People talk about heartbreak like it's an explosion, but mine was a slow leak. A balloon losing air in the corner of a forgotten room. No bang, no crash, just silence. It's been 3 years. He married someone else. I saw it on the news. Her name was Rebecca something. She looked kind. I'm still a nurse, still quietly walking down sterile halls, still talking to patients who may or may not hear me. But sometimes on quiet nights, I return to that room in my memory. I sit beside the man I once loved in silence. I read him poems he'll never remember. I hum lullabies to someone who never belonged to me.